So welcome back to the Almost Aviation Skunk Works. We're sitting in the cockpit of the Beech Baron 58 again in X-Plane, and we're going to look at the next iteration of my cockpit. Why fly when you can tinker? That's what I always think. You may remember, if you've followed along, the most recent significant change I've made to the cockpit was to raise the height of all of this so that I could raise the screens up by 10 centimeters. And the advantage of that is it allows me to basically see the screens in almost totality, and particularly the forward screen, which is, after all, the screen to which you direct most of your attention when flying. But what I miss from the way it was before was that really nice kind of sideways view. Because the screens were so low, looking out to the sides, you also got, beyond the instrument panel, something of a downward view as well, and that really aids to the sense of presence in the cockpit and situational awareness, particularly, I have to say, in higher wing aircraft like the Twin Otter. In the Baron, after all, when you look out to the sides, what you pretty much see is engine and wing. But still, I don't want to undersell it. Even in the Baron, it's nicer in that sense to have those lower screen side views. So what I thought I would do is play with that and perhaps reach some compromise. My initial thought was to lower the screens back down by half of the height that I raised them, so by about 5 centimeters. That should be straightforward to do. But then I got to thinking, wouldn't it be nice if we could have the best of both worlds? We could leave the main screen where it is, which means I can see pretty much the whole screen, and that gives me a nice forward display, great for the approach and just for the scenic aspect as well. But if we could move the side screens down, so they're essentially, how to describe this, staggered. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to make that happen and see what impact it has on the experience of flying. So here we are with the new hybrid setup ready to go. We're going to take it for a short test flight just to see how it flies, and I have to say it was very easy to do, very straightforward, and I'm really surprised that I've never seen this done before. I'm sure somebody must be doing it, but it's a very effective way of setting up the screens, particularly if you've got a hardware panel like I have here. I think one of the reasons that it's not a very common way to set the screens up is it's very difficult to do. I'm not sure if it's possible to do in FSX. Well, no, that's not true. It is possible to do in FSX if you fly with 3 separate windows. I think the logistics of using that are very questionable, because with FSX I think I'm right in saying it's very problematic, if not impossible, to actually save the window positions if you use multiple windows. Now in X-Plane 11, which is what we're running here, it's very straightforward to do. So I'll show you that in just a second. Now most people that use a triple screen display such as this, and myself included, typically use a NVIDIA surround display, which basically treats the 3 monitors as one. And as far as I know, there's no way to do that with the 2D surround with your NVIDIA card, or indeed using iFinity. Well, it may be possible with iFinity on an ATI card. I don't have any very much experience of ATI cards, but to do it in X-Plane 11 is very easy. If you just go to the graphics setup, so you have, well, I have my 3 displays. This is the center display, left display and the right display. So I've got a 50-degree field of view on each of my 3 displays, giving me a total span of 150 degrees approximately, because we have bezel correction as well. If we look at the left hand display, the field of view is set to 50, but we have a lateral rotation offset of roughly 50 degrees. It's actually, minus 50 degrees. It's actually 51.5 to account for the bezels. So that should be familiar to you if you're using a triple screen display in X-Plane already. The difference is, for the left hand display, as well as the field of view and the lateral rotation offset. We've set this flat fractional offset, it's called. Can I scroll that down? In the vertical direction. Now what that does is, if you set that to 1, it offsets the display by a whole screen height in the vertical direction, or if you did it in the horizontal direction, it would be a whole screen width. And I think that's intended for using banks of multiple monitors stacked one on top of the other. So what we need to do is, if we move the monitor down by, it's currently moved down by approximately 1/8 of its height, we need to set the offset to about 1/8, or well, in fact it's not 1/8, I've tinkered with it, it's 0.07. Anyway, I started off at an 8 and then tweaked it just basically till the horizons line up and the other things line up. And it's as simple as that, as far as I can tell. And so I've done that on the left hand side, I've done it on the right hand side. But if I change that back to 0, if you watch the display here, you can see it's offset by the same amount as the physical offset of the monitors. So if I start off by setting that to 0.125, and it should be a negative value, negative offset, so minus 0.125, which is an 1/8, which is what I calculated it should be. That's too much. It's too high. It's also rounded that figure to two significant figures. But for some reason that calculation is not quite as simple as I thought it was. So I just started to tinker, and if I set it to 0.1, it's closer but still not there. So I just kept winding it down, and I arrived at 0.07. And that pretty much lines up on the horizon and also on the other parts of the outside view. And then we do the same on the right hand side and we're good to go. So that's straightforward. It may be that Prepared version 3 and version 4 have this built in. I know there is some talk about multi-screen support, or multiple viewports I think it's called, in Prepared, but I don't have that installed, so I haven't been able to test that out. So it may be that you can do this very simply in Prepared as well. I think you might be able to do it in FSX using Opus FSI. You may remember a little while back when I was experimenting with the side views, I installed Opus FSI and I was using multiple windows on I was using Live View to run them on a separate PC, but nevertheless I was using 2 windows on the same PC, 3 at one point, and it allowed me to set them up and to remember the positions, and presumably then to offset the views in the same way would be possible. So the problem with this is, if I want to fly FSX, which I do using the NVIDIA surround mode, not only do I have to switch from multiple screens to surround mode, which in itself is a little bit of a faff, it's actually not going to be usable because surround, as I've just described, won't work properly with the monitors in this physically staggered configuration. Alright, so let's go for a flight and we'll check this out. SR-71's down the other end again. Caution, wake turbulence. Got plenty of runway here. That's my glitchy props that's making us do that. Let's sync the props. Alright. subjectively, this is a much more satisfactory setup with the screens. Got much better peripheral vision. And a sense of kind of being there, really, which is important. It's what we're aiming for. And of course we've still got adjustment to the seat height and position. The next challenge is going to be to colour match these screens, because the centre screen, which you may remember I sourced separately from the two outer screens, I think the settings are identical on all three screens, but the centre one is looking much yellower, so they don't actually line up very well colour wise. For navigational purposes, we're just going to follow this road here. It's a bit hazy, it's kind of hard to see, so the destination's over there somewhere. That sort of lighter coloured area. This is New York State. We're on Long Island. You can see the ocean to the left and to the right. Right, we're going to start the approach. We can put the wheels down. That'll help us slow down. If we follow this, we've got these two roads that converge on a kind of an intersection here. Pretty much at the threshold of the airstrip. We've got a choice between a hard strip and a grass strip. They're side by side, running roughly north-south. The grass strip's wider and a little bit longer, but we're going to go for the hard strip today. And it's a marginal strip for this aircraft. In terms of length, it's actually very narrow, the hard strip as well. I think it's 75 feet wide. Actually 75 feet sounds like quite a lot. 20 feet wide. 75 feet I think is the grass strip. A bit high here. That's great, you know, that peripheral vision coming off that road there. Very helpful. Okay, that wasn't too bad. The nose wheel came back up a bit there. So there it is, our new screen layout. I think that works pretty well.